Mach 3, give me crew show on 2, 3, and 4.
Line 1, Exxon 1.
6, 3. Mach 3, give me start line 2.
5 electric. Mach 3. Line 1.
Mach 3, give me start line 1 and crew show on 7 and 9.
Line 1, crew show 7 and 9, Mach 9.
Yeah, do something. I hate weapons.
Super Op, line 3, red ball, avionics.
Super Ops. Line 4 is code 3 for engine vibe.
Fuck. Hey, so I started a Patreon because frankly, this stuff's getting expensive. Nothing will change the podcast or the blog if you don't subscribe, but if you want early access to episodes, monthly AMAs, episode shoutouts, voting on podcast topics, and all kinds of 20 Years Done gear, head over to patreon.com/20yearsdone. Okay, so today we're going to have a conversation about NONR, the word, the culture, maintenance, and kind of the interdependence or the conflict or the sort of interactions between maintainers and non-maintainers. So I'm joined by Val, who is currently in the Air Force as a services airman, correct?
Correct.
And how long have you been in?
A little over 3 years.
Okay. And then I'm also joined by Brandon, who worked for me at Holloman from, well, you only worked for me briefly. We worked together from like 2014 to 2017-ish. That sounds right?
16-ish, yeah. Yep, 16-ish.
And then you retired about a little over a year ago, correct?
We are in November, so a year ago on the 1st.
Yep. And your beard is the culmination of that time measured in hair growth. Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. It has not been cut in 1 year.
Nicely done. Okay. So I guess I'm going to start with, let's define NONR, because there's two definitions floating out there and one's right and one's wrong. And I think one of the definitions is some fucking NONRs trying to weasel their way into not being NONRs, right? So one definition is if you're non-essential personnel, then you're a NONR. So non-essential personnel would be like not command posts, not security forces, not aircraft maintenance, not a few other things. The other definition is non-sortie producing motherfucker, which is what I was taught is a NONR, which means if you don't directly contribute to producing sorties, then you're a NONR. So the second one is the correct answer. Like command post is a fucking NONR. Like that's just what it is. First, I want to kind of deconstruct. I guess I'm going to start with you, Val. What does it feel like when you're called a NONR?
The term doesn't offend me. Like, I think even in tech school, they kind of prepare you for that. They tell you, people are going to see what you do and see what they do and say, you don't do anything, you don't do much. So it doesn't offend me at all. It is what it is. I don't feel particularly tied to it just because I had a weird Air Force experience. Like I came in, I was supposed to be security forces, and when I graduated basic, I was services. Like I came in with an open contract. So I didn't choose the NONR life, it chose me. So I just took that and ran with it. The basic stuff they say, make the best of it. So it doesn't really offend me.
So, Brandon, you have a unique perspective because you're married to somebody, and we're not going to get into like the details of that. You're married to somebody that used to be in aircraft maintenance and is now a NONR, right?
Correct. Yep. She commissioned around 5 years ago into nursing.
Right. So you get to kind of see both sides of the coin through her lens. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we actually had a talk about it, and she actually sometimes gets annoyed now if I keep saying that word NONR, which is kind of weird considering she used to be aircraft maintenance.
Right. So I guess did she articulate why that word bothers her?
Not too much, just more like watch who you're talking to. Remember, I used to load bombs. Like basically it.
Okay. So like I kind of see NONR as it's a derogatory term, right? Like it's certainly used in a derogatory way a lot of the time.
That's the only way aircraft maintainers are going to use that word.
Well, sometimes because like when an aircraft maintainer like moves from the flight line to like teaching, then NONR becomes like this, like they're almost bragging about it a little bit. Oh, I'm living that NONR life now. I got PT and I got lunch hours and I got all this stuff.
Or like support. or tool room. You kind of brag on those people.
I could see how that is, but their friends are gonna make it derogatory towards them when they
That's fair.
bust their balls.
Yeah, and it's very much like it's condensation. It's you're looking down on the person because of the, and really let's get to the nuts and bolts of it. When you're calling someone an honor, you're looking down on that person because the belief is their contribution to the mission is lesser, right? Like that's really the brass tacks of it.
Yeah.
And here's how I kind of see it. Like, in the Army, they have a similar term, right? It's POG, people, persons other than grunt or something, implying that if you're not infantry and or in a kinetic sort of field, then you're just a piece of shit, and you're carrying less of the mission than others. And I'll say
Isn't that funny? Like how Army will glorify their infantry, but our security forces is like the joke.
Yeah, but in fairness, you can't really compare infantry.
Yeah, I mean, so their MPs will take the heat too.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if MPs are considered POG. Probably. But like, if a special forces guy came up to me as a crew chief, like if I was still active and I was still a crew chief, and a special forces guy came up to me and started talking shit about me, and whatever word, if he called me a pogue or whatever, I mean, since I retired, I've been there. When I told people what I did, they're like, "Oh, you're a pogue," and that's, I'm like, well, I don't know what a fucking pogue is, and they had to explain it. And by the way, I'm 99% sure I'm pronouncing it right. It's POG. I'm gonna feel really fucking dumb if I've been saying pogue this whole time. It's actually pog, but we'll see. It might be because I'm a fucking pogue and I don't know how to even say it right. That's a distinct possibility. But like, if a security forces guy calls me a pogue, I'm gonna be like, "Yep," like. You fucking work way harder than me as special forces. Like, you risk your life. There's like physical demands. You deploy more. You're carrying a much heavy load on the mission compared to what I do. Like, that's, for me, that's not going to bother me at all. Like, at all whatsoever. Like, yeah, I don't want your job. That shit looks hard and miserable, and I don't want to fucking do it. So there's like a hierarchy where it's like, nonners at the bottom, and then maintainers, and then like special forces kinetic people. And like, I'm perfectly okay with these people at the top looking down on me. But I'm not sure how many nonners are okay with maintainers looking down on them. And also, that's not like an end all be all of this is what it is, but that's kind of like the general framing of it. So I guess I'll also ask you, Val, like, does that perception and does that that word and that culture, that sort of culture clash between maintenance and non-maintainers, does that create like some strife between those career fields that is unnecessary, that like harms both non-maintenance career fields and maintainers trying to get things done?
I think sometimes it could. I've seen more of a ripple effect within SG overall because, MSG also includes like our dirt boys and our cops. And obviously on the hierarchy, they're way more important and essential than services. So we kind of get lumped under that MSG umbrella. And it's a big issue with money, funding. It's obviously going to go to those people first. But as far as maintenance, it's hard to say because you don't interact with them on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I feel like perception is everything. If you have a bad experience with one crew chief, one avionics dude, or, one person in the DFAC, one person in the gym, that's going to change the way that you think about that whole career field and that job as a whole, unfortunately, sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Brandon, with your wife being medical, I'm sure she interacts with literally all the career fields all the time, right?
Yes.
Has she talked about how, like there's a disdain or contempt for her or for medical people from maintainers that kind of come in and see her?
No, not so much. I mean, she's also a nurse too, so her interaction is, diagnosis, get you out the door kind of thing. And unfortunately here at Offutt, she doesn't have airmen that work like directly like that. It's more phone based, and we'll see you if it's needed to be seen kind of thing here. So I don't have like that airman perspective of how they look at the maintenance side or the aircraft maintenance side be a nonner. Yeah, she doesn't really see it that much.
Does she experience any sort of like, because she went from aircraft maintenance to, you know, medical.
Mhm.
What was that culture shift like for her?
I remember, especially after she commissioned, she had to go through school course for officer training and all that. And that was kind of jokey to her because of the fact that nurses don't have to go through the boot camp side. They go through the easier side of,
Yep.
you know, officer training. It's just funny that she would say that, you know, maybe these nonners are, man, they're so soft. Like they don't really like know how it really works. But since the time's gone on, she likes her role outside of dirt, sweat, and jet fuel.
Yeah, that's pretty typical. There's like a where you kind of acclimate to the new sort of professional environment, and then like your tolerance for some things goes up and your tolerance for other things goes way down, because like when you're in maintenance, your tolerance for routing something appropriately is fucking really low. Like I don't give a shit who needs to sign this or in what order. I just know I need the fucking commander to sign it, and let's get this shit signed. I got way more important shit to do. But like when you're not in maintenance anymore and you're more in an administrative sort of role, then you're like, okay, I get it. The flight chief, the shirt, they need to see that. Like your tolerance for the minutia really kind of goes up because you can, I don't know, you have the bandwidth for it. So I guess what I'll also ask you, Val, tell me about your job. Let's start with, tell me about your job from what you've done, because I know services is kind of varied, right? It's between, you know,
Yeah,
there's
it's a lot bigger to defend the non-airs though. It's a lot bigger than people think. So a lot of airmen work at the DFAC. We serve food to the airmen in the dorms and also for, you know, distinguished visitors, stuff like that. At the fitness center, you can become a personal trainer. I was FAC manager for a while, so I ran all the PT tests for the whole base. Base honor guard, mortuary affairs for the entire base, and protocol, kind of along with the DV visits and stuff like that. And that's pretty much, and we also do lodging, but they got rid of that, contracted that out stateside. So you only really do that on deployment. And in Africa, I did MWR, so hosting events, different kind of morale, stuff like that. Yep.
So that's a lot of different stuff, right? Of those, which have you done in your career?
I've done food, fitness. That's been the bulk of it. And most people, you're supposed to rotate every 24 months, but that doesn't really happen like that. We're really easily, we get pulled a lot. I've done force protection before, augmentee duty, stuff like that. So we're kind of floaters. I love to say jack of all trades, master of none. So I think I really do think it's fun. We get to do a lot of cool stuff. And that's probably not what a lot of people say when they describe their job in the Air Force as fun. But you try and make the best of it. And there are admin sides. You're not, you know, spending 12 hours on your feet cooking food for people, you know, downrange. It's not always like that. You can do admin jobs as well.
You know, initially when I did that call for an honor to come on the show, which didn't go over well, like it might be because I used the term non-er like 3 times in the post asking. What I really wanted was like either a finance or an MPF type person that like I knew could like deconstruct, because you know, just like how I detailed like special forces and then maintainers and then non-ers, like there's probably a legitimate non-er hierarchy as well. Where there's
I think everyone in the Air Force hates finance. I don't think it gets worse. I feel bad, but I think they're the people that get hated on the most, really.
Yeah, so I didn't get any finance people. It may be because I didn't call during their walk-in hours of 3 to 3:10. I might have missed that. But
probably closed for training.
But you know, what's interesting is, and I'm sure Brandon can attest to this, like when I worked aircraft maintenance, that shit was fucking hard. It was hard and it was stressful and it was like all consuming in your life, weekends and you know, short tours, deployments, and not enough things to get everything done, and like you're agitated and you're angry all the time and you're frustrated. But when you start getting good at it and you start getting jets fixed, and not only do you get jets fixed, but I remember there was a specific time in 2004 where I was a young 7 level and we had a a JFS no start issue like you wouldn't believe. And for like 9 months, I worked 12 hours a day, every single day. And then I started, getting good at troubleshooting. And when I finally got one of those persistent jets fixed where I had figured out what the fuck was wrong and I changed it and I knew the jet was good and we were leaving at our 8-hour mark and my guys were leaving too, like because of my knowledge and my skill, these 3 guys that are on my crew, they get to go home and like see their family or go home and decompress and play video games or whatever the fuck they want to do. I'm giving them time because of my knowledge and my skill. Like that's some serious job satisfaction that I haven't had outside of maintenance. In fairness, I've only worked like 2 years and hasn't been a whole lot, but like that's legit job satisfaction where like it is a tangible result. And then if you add the deployment piece of it, I got this jet fixed, the pilot got in it and he immediately took off and put bombs downrange, protected people that were pinned down in a bunker or something like as a quick response. Like that is a massive job satisfaction, like instant gratification. And I imagine that doesn't happen in at least to that level or just generally in a lot of the career fields that are called non-er. Like does finance, I mean, we don't have a finance person here, but does finance have like the equivalent? I'm sure medical does, right, Brandon? Because at some point you're like diagnosing and fixing something and maybe like changing someone's life for the better.
Yeah, for my wife's part, especially when we were at Nellis when she was working direct patient all the time, is basically when you get people out of beds, that's the kicker. For the I guess services non-ers, I mean, I'm sure they have their own stressors as far as job satisfaction is concerned. It just maybe not be the more of the extrinsic,
part
of it, as far as where we get a big old smile and they might just go home and be just be like, wow, that was a lot I had to do today and it's done. But
yeah, so like tell me about what job satisfaction you've experienced, Val.
I think most recently, the first one that comes to mind was I was in ALS and a guy came up to me and he said, hey, like, I recognize you. And I was like, well, I work at the gym, I work at the DFAC. Services, you get recognized pretty easily because your face is out there, your customer service,
Right.
And I was like, yeah, that's probably how you know me. And he said, no, I remember you specifically because my wife took a PT test with you. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I don't remember everybody. There's almost 9,000, 8,000 airmen on that base, right? So I don't remember every day, every test. And he said, yeah, well, she has really bad anxiety. And during her test, she was really sick. She was really scared. And he said that you were the only one that took care of her and made sure she was okay, during her PT test. And so it's just like a little thing. And I'm sure medical definitely experiences stuff like that. So it makes you feel good knowing that you helped someone or made someone's day better. But also it can be draining being a customer service job. You're constantly providing services and you never really see like the fruits of your labor, right? You don't see like this goal. The jet doesn't get fixed. It's not like a black and white, we completed the mission. Our mission is people. So you don't know. So I guess hearing stories like that.
Man, so that's like a double-edged sword because first of all, you're talking about it's sometimes it can be really difficult to quantify like a tangible job satisfaction outcome because you're working in customer service, right? And then the second piece is, and Brandon, I know you and I experienced this, like crew maintainers don't have customer service. Like they are mean-spirited and like condescending. So like we don't have an expectation for us to be like socially like aware of the harm and our meanness and our saltiness. So like we don't give a fuck how we treat people because all we care about is fixing jets. And most of the time that's rewarded. Like we don't care if somebody's angry. I mean, fuck, how often was I like totally unhinged? Everybody's like, you're a great super. Like, yeah, but you can't take me anywhere because I'm like terrible.
Yeah, it's true.
And Val's talking about like, you have to put on a face, you have to like work with the customers. And like, that's a totally different skill set that doesn't necessarily create a reward for a job well done unless that customer, like you described, later comes back and said, hey, you made a difference. Like if that person had never if no one had ever come back to you and said, hey, my wife was really nervous and you really helped her out, that was a big deal. Like if, let's say that never happened anywhere between the comment cards at billeting or the comment cards at, all those comment cards, or even just stopping off the personal trainers, whatever. Let's say there was never a time someone came up to you and said, hey, thank you, good job. Where would you guys be able to derive your job satisfaction from?
It goes back to your careerism. It's the awards. It's the praise from your leadership. Pretty much that, because it's easy to just go around and be like, hey guys, yeah, you're doing a great job. But like I said before, if you don't see a direct result of your work,
Yep.
people get sad, they get lazy, they get down. Why am I doing this job? Why am I here? I mean, that's military at all. Like they like to treat you like you're expendable, right? We're very replaceable. They can do it in an instant. And then non-er jobs probably feel that even more.
That's tough if really the job satisfaction on that in services, finance, wherever throughout those type of careers, that it's all about praise or an award or something like that. That's rough, because I mean, that only goes to one person a quarter, one person a month. If you have a monthly program like that or anything like that, that one's tough.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I can't imagine working in, I'm going to just try to imagine what it's like to work in finance and like just grinding through travel vouchers and, pay issues where there's like a backlog, because I know there's a backlog because we as the customers of finance are always complaining that our shit's taking too long, which to me implies there's a backlog, right? So like as soon as you get done with one, nobody cares you got that one fucking done, because what are you doing on the next one? What are you doing on the next one? What are you doing on the next one? And I just can't imagine, like, there's definitely like the perception of maintenance that non-ers have an easier life and it's better and they get lunch hours and they get PT time. But I suspect they have very fucking little job satisfaction. When I tell someone what I did in the Air Force, besides the fact the first question they ask is if I'm a pilot. So don't worry, Val, everybody gets fucking annoyed except for pilots. And by the way, if anybody's listening that isn't in the Air Force, you don't need to ask somebody who's a pilot, because they'll fucking tell you like fucking immediately. They'll tell you I'm a pilot.
Yeah.
So
if they're from Texas, they'll let you know too.
Yeah. CrossFit, vegan, pilot.
Yes.
That's I'm gonna take a 2-second sidebar. Every time I get on a plane now and I sit down next to a stranger, I said, hey, good news, I'm a CrossFitting vegan pilot, so we'll have plenty to talk about on this trip for the next 4 hours. And then they're like,
how many laps do you get?
Oh, they're like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just kidding. I'm just gonna fucking go to sleep in this chair. Like, thank God. But so like when I describe what I did in the Air Force, like that, it's glamorous, right? Like there's a certain amount of pride. And Val, I'm not knocking you. Like I'm trying to imagine, like it's got to be really hard to describe when you tell people you're in the Air Force, their mind immediately goes to like movie/glamorous sorts of jobs. Even when I say maintenance, I go, those guys that were running away in Transformers that got blown up, but like that was me, like the guys that got blown up by the thing.
And like it's so unfair that maintainers are like called dumb, but it takes a lot especially if you're not mechanically inclined to teach yourself how to fix a jet. Like I think that is crazy that you are fixing a jet. Like that's insane. And
that's why we go to school for 9 months, though.
Yeah, we do go to school for a long time. We don't know anything.
That's one thing we didn't like about non-ers too in tech school. Like, oh, you're getting out in 3 weeks. That's fun.
Yeah.
But because you have so much technical knowledge, you can't. I mean, even though you say maintainers get treated like garbage, you know your worth. The jets are not going to go up without you, right? And once you leave the military, you already have this skill set. Once non-ers leave the military, if they don't use Skill Bridge, if they don't go to school, what skills do you have? Balancing an Excel spreadsheet? It's a lot different, I think.
Yeah, that's like a minimum wage secretary, admin, or a line cook, or depending on what certifications you got. Like I'm just thinking of like all the things you went through. Like if you get a certification to be a personal trainer, you can probably make some good money. But if you didn't get that certification while you're serving, then you're gonna be able to work at like Planet Fitness handing out towels at the reception center. And again, that's not a knock, but but I guess my question is when you tell someone for the first time that you're in the Air Force and after they go, are you a pilot? And you say no, and then you tell them what you do. Like, do you have, again, this is,
Yes, I have a story. I have a
go
story.
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd automatically default to readiness. I think readiness is the most badass part. You know,
Glamorous. Yeah.
mortuary affairs is very important, and readiness too. Our UDMs are very, very important to the squadron. So I say, yeah, I get people ready for deployment. You know, we get them all trained up, and that, you know, that was my ALS BS as well. You know, you can't get people ready for deployment if they're not physically fit. If you don't have their paperwork, got to get their SIPR stuff. So that's kind of the angle I take. I know it's kind of dark to rely on honor guard and mortuary affairs, but that's the coolest sounding I can make it.
I think
and I'm not lying because it's part of the job.
I think it's interesting that you default to the coolest part of your job, because I think by doing that, there's an implication that there's a certain amount of shame for the less glamorous parts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I think services is probably the lowest ASVAB score, if I'm correct. Yeah, no, it's embarrassing to say you're a cook, right? And you could just be like flipping patties at McDonald's, and that's the same thing essentially. And also, I think because services has one of the lowest ASVAB scores in the whole military, right? So that kind of implies that you're dumb, right? You
Yep.
can't get any other job. And if you fail like reclass, a lot of people get sent to services. And also, one of the biggest things too is not that this defects from their like level of intelligence, but if you don't have a citizenship, a lot of them come to services,
Right.
because that's one of the few jobs.
Security clearance requirements really low, right?
So a lot of people are very low on morale because they don't want to be there. They didn't intend to be there.
So I guess also what's interesting about that too is, like, I think it's important to like empathize and view it through the lens of what you're describing, where you have a job where you intentionally are trying to portray it in the best possible light to a stranger, because there's a certain amount of shame with other aspects of your job, right? And then let's say you're working at the chow hall, working, cooking or serving, and then you have maintainers come in and like call you non-er at the same time. Like, you already are carrying some shame over part of what your job is, which, by the way, I suspect most people don't volunteer to come into services. It's probably very much an open general.
Now, yeah, unless you really want to go to culinary school or like kind of become like a White House chef, that's a pretty easy road. Not easy, but very typical road some people take. Yes.
So you just said, the people in your career field struggle with morale because of, the job satisfaction, depending on what they're doing, could be low. And then you have maintainers like looking down on them and talking down on them. So like, that's like it's a double hit, right?
In a way, yeah. I think some friendships can be made. I do have a lot of friends in maintenance, and once you get up in the ranks, like being a staff, you get a lot more responsibility. So you can kind of, empathize with that. But I can't complain to them about my non-er problems. Like, that would just be insulting, right? Like, if I complained about not getting the day off or something like that, not going to lunch, they would be like, okay, really? So you only can complain to like your non-er friends about that kind of stuff.
And that's a good point too, Brandon. How much do you think when people are calling other people non-ers, it's because they wish they had PT during the duty day, 8-hour shifts, working in air conditioning, and having a lunch break? How much of it is just envy, do you think?
I think on our crew chief side is almost probably in the top 85% probably of us we want to go in at 8 and we want to leave at 5, or we want to go in at 7 and want to leave at 4 or even 3 or whatever it is. That's basically, I can remember probably when I was a staff is when I stopped the whole trend of me calling people non-ers. It was more in my younger times when I was an airman, not knowing any other really career fields other than the ones we work directly with, who and our career field would be weapons. I look down at other career fields that weren't on the flight line, busting 12 to 15-hour days, weekends. I can recall one time, airman, like dorm airman, when I was in Eielson, I got kicked out of DFAC because I smelled like fuel.
Right.
So you gotta.
Which is
you
like
gotta kind of not bite your tongue.
That's offensive as a maintainer, because you're like, oh, dude, I'm just trying to get some food and I've been working hard. But I think it's also important to note you shouldn't be bringing fucking jet fuel into places where people eat. Like, it's not an unreasonable thing to get called on, right?
Right.
It just probably depends on the place,
No,
probably.
that's totally, especially when you smell like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry that happened to you.
Well, I mean,
Oh no, yeah, but I was a kid fresh out of New York.
so also like what you talked about, Brandon, like when you were younger, you kind of really had that where you had that anti-noner sort of perspective, but as you got older, you kind of grew out of it. I think that happens a lot too, where I think there's a certain level of maturity that, again, in fairness, I use noner, but I don't use it like as a derogatory. I just use it as a category. Like that's when I made the post asking for a noner. It wasn't like I want a lazy piece of shit that doesn't do their fucking job to come on. That wasn't my implication. It was I want somebody that is in this classification to come on and be able to talk about it. I think it's also how you use the word, right? Like how you use noner is big. And I think you're right. There is a maturity level that you reach a point where it doesn't have that negative connotation anymore. But it makes me wonder if throwing it around, even if you don't intend it to be, when I think about what Val was describing, where people already have a little bit of shame and they have maybe some low morale and low job satisfaction, that even me using it kind of flippantly or not with nefarious intent would still have the same. Like, at that point, am I just piling on to what that person's like experiencing?
I really don't think many people get offended. If they really are getting offended over being called a noner, it's probably because they're a noner in the sense of they're not a genuinely hardworking person, and then they're like, oh dang, like I'm actually called out, because it's easier to coast in those jobs, right? If you're not really good at doing your paperwork or you're not the best at customer service, it's not that big of a deal. But if you can't fix a jet, you can't, you know what I mean? That's a lot more tangible.
Well, that actually
describing your work ethic.
That brings up a good point too. Very often, a noner rebuttal is, well, you can't do your job without your pay. You can't do your job unless you're fed. You can't do your job, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your face, Val, the face you're making matches my thought process, which is that's bullshit, because you can hire a very, again, I'm not knocking you, but what you described of what job opportunities there are for somebody that was a line cook at the DFAC is he's going to go work at fucking McDonald's or maybe a little bit better.
We are military grade.
Yeah, I can, we can hire somebody for $13 an hour to work at finance, right? What am I missing? Like, if I need somebody that's just going to live in this environment, isn't that a fucking replaceable job?
It is, I guess, but I don't know enough about big Air Force. I guess it's always about money, right? The Air Force is a business, so that's a big argument. If I'm such an honor and I'm so worthless, why does the Air Force keep me around?
That is a good argument.
Why do they keep the job? Why don't they just get rid of it? So I don't know the answer.
I speculate that there's some jobs that exist in an employed environment that are just going to be too expensive to contract out with somebody because, whatever is going on and the cost. But I think it's also because the Air Force is really shitty at managing people and money, where they just get a budget and they think they can reach the budget. I think there's a lot of jobs that could be outsourced to civilians where they don't have like the huge benefit package that a military member gets from a 20-year career. Like, that's, to me, it strikes me as it's very expensive for some of these jobs when you're looking at finance. And again, I'm readily admitting that I'm ignorant on a lot of these jobs. I wasn't in it, and I only see from the outside looking in on some of these. But I don't know if a finance person or an MPF person or a services person, if they do 20 years, like, did the taxpayer get their money's worth when you're looking at a lifetime of VA compensation plus, retirement benefits and all the other things that go into it for what they provided to the service? Like, I didn't have that thought when we started, but now that I think about it, like, I don't know if that's like, is that feasible?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad question to ask. I mean, I'm sure a lot of nonners ask it themselves. Like I said before, they're going to work thinking, is what I'm doing really matter? Does it really matter? Am I really changing people's lives? I mean,
Yep,
but that's a philosophical question you could go
that's fair.
days talking about, right? So I wouldn't want to fall down that rabbit hole. But as far as the military is concerned, I mean, to help each other, right?
Yeah,
Maybe people are so angry at nonners because nonners are, manufactured. I don't know. We're
demand like the
manufactured to
that's
bring
fair.
the people together, right? I don't.
That's fair. So I guess finally,
Hold on, Chris, to go back on that too.
yeah, go ahead.
I can't remember. Did you deploy?
I have, yes.
Oh, not Val. Chris, did
No,
you ever make it over?
which is also an interesting point. Like, I mean, so when I talk to civilians, I say, yeah, I didn't deploy, and then I tell them I was in Korea for a year, and they're like, that's a deployment. I'm like, I don't think you fucking understand what a deployment is. That's not a deployment. I just drank a
Yeah, that's
shitload
drinking
of
with your
booze
buddies for a
for a
year.
fucking year and slept in my gas mask at work, and you paid for it. That's not a fucking deployment. But no, I didn't, which is an interesting point because Val has. Like Val was talking about she was deployed to Africa. Like I haven't
We
fucking deployed
have
to
a very
Africa.
high
booty?
deployment rate.
Yep.
No, what I was going with that, Chris, though, is that you were asking the question about contracting kind of that stuff out.
Yep.
Because one out of 4 of my deployments, I actually got to go do force protection. But we moved from security forces to CE. So we fell under CE, but a lot of our job was watching TCNs
Yeah,
and
TCN
chow
stuff.
halls.
Yep.
Yeah. So, but the chow halls there are almost all manned by contract,
Yep.
right? And then you had a few specialists, obviously, from services or whoever who were over them. So,
Yeah, I guess
Probably doing the ordering.
I don't know if it,
I just don't know why. Like, it feels like it would be cheaper and more efficient if all the jobs that you don't like need a military person for, you just didn't have a fucking military person for. Like, I don't know what I'm missing here.
yeah, I don't know.
Like, why does the
Probably
person
hourly,
at
whatever it
why
costs,
does the finance need to be full of people in uniform?
I don't know. My base is a little different. I feel like we have a pretty good ratio, just dependent on your ops tempo. Some places have a lot of civilians
Yeah.
intermingled. I work with a decent amount of civilians, so they take our place when we do deploy. So they don't completely replace us. They
Like a
replace us
backfill.
at times. Yeah.
But I guess my
yeah, and I
question
don't
is,
know how that. Oh, I'm sorry.
why do you have any? Why not just all civilians?
Yeah, but with that too, Chris, like, are they GSs? I don't know how that kind of money works,
I
but
think it's like
don't GSs?
WGs or something.
Yeah, but don't they get to retire after 20? I have no idea, but
I think again, unfortunately, I wish I would have come better prepared for this podcast. And if anybody listening wants to make a comment on the Facebook page to educate us, because our combined knowledge on this apparently is much lower than I realized. But like, there's got to be like government, where there's no like, besides a 401k or TSP. I think it's just TSP. I don't think you get like a full blown federal retirement anymore, which is very contributory, right? And certainly not healthcare, VA benefits. Like, you're not, if you just a straight GS or WG, you're not going to get fucking VA benefits. Like, that's not a thing. Like, it's an expensive thing to grow a service member up to 20 years, let them retire, lifetime pension, VA benefits, education benefits, GI, post 9/11 GI Bill, like all the things go into that. It's fucking costly. And I don't know why we have military people filling some of these roles where they don't need to be military people, except for the fact that maybe there has to be low-level military people in these roles, because eventually you are going to need a military person to like oversee it. And you can't just make a master sergeant in finance, right? You got to fucking like grow one from A1C in finance to kind of come up into it. But it just feels like there's got to be a fucking better way to do this, which wasn't also my intent of this conversation, to deconstruct why nonners shouldn't exist, Val. So that's not why I invited
I'm
you
gonna
here.
have to think about that more. I mean, I'm on the surface, yes, but maybe if we find someone higher up, they can explain it to us. Besides providing that same answer that we all support the fight, some kind of propaganda.
So also one more thing, Val.
But see, with that,
go ahead,
with
Brandon.
that too, Chris. I'm sorry. With that too, though. Nellis contracts crew chiefs.
Yep.
They're not. Yeah. So I mean, we got contracted. I
So-
say that too.
Okay,
A lot
so
of people get out to come back and work.
yeah, but the cost difference between a crew chief,
Yeah, you getting paid.
like when I did, when I worked in the 21st, I think it was like 35 an hour, and I would literally spend like an hour wrapping joke bottles in joke paperwork and putting a rubber band on it, and I'd fucking take a picture of it and send it to my wife and be like, I just got paid $35 fucking to put paper around bottles for an hour. This is stupid as fuck.
Flight line honor.
But going back to what you were saying, yeah, that's fair. Going back to what you were saying, Brandon, like I think one of the solutions to our current crisis in aircraft maintenance between lack of people and lack of experiences, and I know this is definitely not the Donner conversation, is we need to spend a fuckload of money, and we need to, like, all those people are doing contract work for Saudi and UAE and Qatar and Norway and Lockheed and fucking Orion and whoever else. Why the fuck are we letting our experienced people leave the service where we're hemorrhaging and then go and work for military industrial complex, and then we're suffering, and then they turn around and sell back the same fucking work to us at a markup? Like part of the reason why we got into this problem with people and experience is because we cut so many fucking people in 2014, and we have programs where we eliminate skilled people because of things that don't fucking matter, like PT scores. Like, okay, if we still want to be that stupid with our personal management and money's the issue, well, money's going to fix this too. Let's throw a shitload of money and get a bunch of qualified, experienced people back in the seat. Like, obviously, they'll go to fucking Saudi and UAE and all these other places. Fucking throw them a bunch of money and like, but that's definitely not the non-er soapbox I want to be on today. So let's transition back in. But that's just what I was thinking. And I think it also could be said for fighter pilots and pilots as well. Like, they retire and then just fucking immediately turn around and offer them a contracting gig as an IP stateside, so they can keep flying without EPRs and PT tests and all that stuff. Pay them a bunch of money, and they get to keep their certifications. But again, I digress. So, but this conversation all started with, because very often when you tell a non-er that he's a non-er, they fire back with, well, you can't crew a jet without a meal in you or something like that. Which is I think it goes back to that thing we were talking about, where it's a lack of
false
job
dichotomy.
And it's also like it's a manifestation of that shame. Like, you're being shit on for your job and you have some shame with it, so you immediately try to fire back and create validation. It goes back to a couple podcasts ago where I talked about how I'm secretly in a public affairs like only Facebook group, and they don't know it. And then like they fucking come on and they announce PA warriors. It's like, just what the fuck is wrong with, like, these aren't warriors. Like, it's PA. They're taking pictures and I think they're fucking pushing propaganda, but that's just me. But like, we need to get away from that culture where we're trying to like create this weird validation for every job as essential to the mission, because I think it's not. I think that's where some of the animosity also comes from maintenance, because as people outside maintenance try to defend the value of their job, I think it really kind of is insulting to the people that are closer to the mission and to the job, and that's where there's a lot of that ire comes from.
No, I definitely agree with that.
So
well, you're still young enough too, Val. So when you first came in and before you went to ALS and actually probably did some networking and met other career fields, like, what did you think of crew chiefs? Were you in awe of crew chiefs or maintenance personnel, or were you more on the oh man, 15 hours, that sucks. Well, I'll see you guys later.
I think, yeah, you definitely have a sense of like being grateful that you don't have to do that. And my husband is maintenance, so he's outside sweating.
Oh wow.
He's in the heat all day, and I can't really complain about my issues to him. So yeah, I just think it's really funny that crew chiefs simultaneously love and hate their job about the same amount, like very passionately. They hate it with a burning passion, but they love it. They love putting their little names on it. Like, it's just funny how, like, however many ways you spin it, and I know that you go through a lot of bad things, I know a lot of people still love it. So there has to be something there that keeps them going. even though they're in these terrible conditions. And I just wish that maybe it's a thing. Maybe the terrible conditions around you, like greaten your love for the job, and
Oh,
that's the only thing you focus on, right?
I think there's a
Everything
few
else
things,
is crappy.
and I
Just
think
focus on the good.
I think that's really insightful, and I think there's a few things going on. I think first of all, it goes back to the job satisfaction, because when you are humming along and you're getting shit fixed, it is like I promise you, you're hitting like reward centers in the brain, and you're getting like dopamine just dumped in because you're fucking getting shit done. And I think there's another almost more important piece here, like when times are good. I don't make good friendships at work. I mean, I make friendships, but I don't rely on those people. But when the shit is terrible at work, the fact that Brandon's here, like me and Brandon served together, and work was really fucking difficult and really hard. Like, I think that's that shared suffrage, where you're on swing shift and you know that you're giving your all with all the people around you and you're relying on them, and you see them more than you see your family. You talk to them, you coach them through things, you help them through divorces, you help them through all these things. That suffrage, a lot of it attributed to the job, the hours, the weekends, the stress, the anxiety, the anger, the frustration that comes with it. Like, it builds a bond working through a terrible environment, and you kind of crave it. And I think it's also what is very likely lacking in, jobs outside maintenance. Like, you come in at 8 and you leave at 5, and there's Brenda that's next door, and she always fucking plays like In Sync, and you get really tired of hearing fucking In Sync. And there's the other lady that has her entire cubicle decorated with like Hello Kitty, and you're like, this is fucking
that's great
offensive
to
to
notice, because your strength and your struggles bring you guys together and you complete something. But in our jobs, the adversity and the stress turns to like annoyance.
Yep.
And arguing with each other.
Yep. And it gets really petty. Like, the stuff
Very
that you
petty.
guys, like, I remember, this is 100% a fucking true story. And I probably was on a anti-nonner bender for like a year or two. But I had a dental appointment, and then I got a phone call a few days before. I think I was a senior airman or staff or something. I got a phone call a few days before asking if I could move my dental appointment up by like 45 minutes because they had a staff meeting during my dental appointment time, and they needed all people in the dental office available. I was like, yeah, that's fine. So I remember I got my teeth done, and I was walking out, and as I was walking through the waiting room, that's where they were doing the staff meeting. So I was like, not tiptoeing, but I was trying to like be as non-intrusive as possible as I traveled through. And as I'm the 30 seconds I'm in this room walking out, I hear like a senior master sergeant go, does anybody know who took A1C Johnson's sandwich out of the fridge? And I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, I moved my appointment so you guys could have a fucking meeting about the fridge or the sandwich. And this is what you're talking about, right? Like, this is the little things that like exist in that world the aircraft mainers don't fucking experience at all whatsoever. So
my
like,
husband bitches when people take his red pen. Apparently they're like expensive or what.
they're sacred.
Depends on what nice one you. So
you can't say that. You get mad when someone
have that red pen.
But someone
touches your pen.
Like, I don't know your husband, but if he was good, he would only need a black pen because he would fix shit instead of writing it up. I'll just go ahead and put that out there as well. No. But I think there's a big difference between the tool necessary to document grounding conditions on aerospace equipment versus a sandwich in a fridge. But it goes back to the drastic cultural differences between those, where we come into work, we suffer together, and we build bonds. And in your environment, it's really just, very often it's just a job where you guys are constantly seeking validation, affirmation, and to squelch like shame. And there's never a fucking time where an aircraft maintainer has ever been ashamed of his job, ever, that I could say.
Is that true, Brandon?
Not for me. I loved being a crew chief. Loved it.
And it was, I would lead with it in conversations. Like, I still do it. Like, I worked on F-16s for 20 years.
Yeah, no, it's like, you know, what you're talking about getting how everybody outside the military is like, oh, are you a pilot? I was like, no, I'm not that dumb. I actually fix the things. So
Yeah.
like we send our pilots to war. We stay back home, but or back at the ground. But
So I'm going to do a final question, and then we'll probably do final thoughts, and we'll wrap up. And I'm going to ask Brandon first. How many maintainers do you think would enjoy being a nonner, like a finance nonner, like a real nonner? And I'm talking the lunch
Like
breaks, the PT, the 8 to 5, the no weekend duties, but they had to sit at a computer, they had to have a clean uniform, and they had to deal with the Hello Kitty next door and staff meetings about sandwiches being stolen. Like,
and
how
so
many
we're
would
talking
that?
about maintainer that is cross training, or if you just went that way instead.
No, let's say cross training. Like they were in maintenance, and now you put them into a nonner lifestyle. How many do you think would be happy there?
We'll just say out of a crew chief office, we'll just be mediocre and say 70 crew chiefs. Probably 5 of them.
Yeah, I think so too. What do you think, Val?
And then they would get there and probably realize 2 of them would be like, "What did I do?"
Yep.
And then
I agree. There's definitely a lack of stimulation that would probably drive them crazy. The slow pace probably would drive them crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I was a nonner for 3 years when I became a maintenance instructor, and the catalyst that made me not want to be a maintenance instructor anymore was I was talking about how people showing up to engine run weren't doing the homework before they showed up, and they were expecting us to make like exceptions for them and cut corners. And it was the instructors were in a meeting with the training managers at the unit. And I said in the meeting, I was like, hey, you need to tell your fucking people they need to show up with their fucking homework. I'm not doing any more fucking favors. I'm going to shoot them down. And if I don't have enough fucking people for the class, then I'm going to cancel the fucking class. And then they can explain why they ruined a class for somebody else. And I got pulled aside afterwards by my chief and said, hey, you need to watch your language. I was like, oh, did I say like bitch or like any like the like offensive sexist words? He's like, no, like you said the F word like 8 or 9 times in like 45 seconds. And I was like, okay, if that's an issue, because we're all over the age of 30 in this room, like if that word used as an adjective in some way hurt the people in that room, I need to get a new fucking job, because this is not going to work anymore.
I wanted to add something to that is I think in my career field, we're not as comfortable, I think, as medical staff, where they kind of call each other by their first names, like stuff like that. But we're comfortable in a casual office setting, right? But it's also a strange line. It's a very thin line, right? Because you're cool with the flight chief one day, everything's fine, you're talking about your weekend, but also then again, Monday morning they can put you at attention, and so it's a very strange, you know what I mean? It's kind of a culture shock. Some offices are very welcoming and calm and not military like at all, and some are very kind of almost trying to compensate for something, saying, oh yeah, we might be nonners, but we are military nonners.
Yeah, and you're gonna have sharp uniforms and all that stuff. Yeah,
so it varies from office to office. Yeah.
Okay, let's do final thoughts. Brandon, do you want to add anything or anything we didn't touch on?
I just want to kind of throw out there, it's some of the people listening that know who me and Chris are and are still grinding. I'm not going to say take the word out of your vocabulary. It's fine to still call people nonners, but at the same time, they're just doing what they're doing, and we got to do what we got to do. So me and Chris know someone. He's very special to me, and he won't let that nonner thing go. If he listens to this podcast, he'll know exactly who I'm talking about. But yeah, just let them. They got to do what they got to do, and don't be mad at finance. At least not the A1C that's sitting at the desk saying, "Can I help you?" Because that dude did not mess up your pay.
Yep,
it wasn't that airman.
Val.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, just don't take things at surface level. Just if you have a bad experience with one nonner, not all nonners are like that. And it's important to keep in mind this is going to sound so nonner, but we really do have a lot of similar struggles, but I understand the difference. That was a bad way to end it. I feel like
you're good.
I think I just retracted all of the progress I had made and went back to my nonnerism. But I see you guys. I think maintenance is the most important job. I really do. So I'm not gonna act like I'm better than anybody, and that non-ers are so important. Everybody matters in a sense, but the mission, you guys are out there doing it.
Here's what I'll say to anybody listening. One, I would at least make the effort. If you have to still keep using non-er, try not to use it as a derogatory, just use it as a descriptor. And then also realize that when you use it, the tone you use it matters to your audience. And then also, what we talked about before, like, I think some of these people are really struggling with shame of their job satisfaction. They don't have the bonds you have. And if you come through and you're just piling on that extra word, and that's going to be the thing that makes them just fucking hate their job or their service or want to get out or makes them flip out or like whatever. Like, I really want you to think, like, is that worth it? And if it's not worth it, I would abandon the word. I'll probably very likely abandon the word. I mean, I'm already not using it as a derogatory, but I can say non-maintenance just as easily like I can say non-er. And then the second thing is what we talked about way back in the very beginning of the podcast is that we as maintainers get job satisfaction on the fucking regular, and they don't. Very much what Val talked about, where her story about job satisfaction very much had to do with somebody coming up to her and letting her know that something that she did had made a difference to a service member or to a customer. So what I would say is, if you have a good experience, if it's a good time, like, I know this is going to sound super fucking Blue Falcon, and it is what it is. Fill out one of those fucking comment cards that are all over the place and drop it in the thing. So that way that person knows that on that day, he helped you get something done that you needed to get done, either through staying and billeting or the PT test, or, where they measured you fairly or whatever it was. Take the time, the 5 minutes, because I think the reality is it's really fucking hard for them to have job satisfaction unless we tell them. And I imagine that the closer we are to the mission, the more that comment is going to give them job satisfaction. Like, if a finance guy tells a services guy, hey, you made like really good food, the services person will be like, well, great. So I fed this fucking non-er. It is what it is, right? But I think if like a crew chief fills it out and says, hey, I only had 5 minutes to get into the chow hall and you hooked me up and it was hot food and it was really good, I appreciate it, and I took another minute to fill this out. You've just tethered what to them feels like a very menial sort of task. You've just tethered their task to the mission. And nothing bad is going to come of that. They're just going to feel rewarded and validated and have job satisfaction. So if they do a good job, I would just say take the time to let them know they did a good job, or even just to their face. I mean, that would work too. That's all I have. But all right. Well, that's it. Val, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you be willing. And as I promised, I was not here to beat up you
That's
as
correct.
the non-er participant.
I was not targeted.
And Brandon, it's good to see you, and I'm glad you joined us. And if anytime you want to talk about any other subject, you're always welcome to come on too. That's an open invitation.
Yes, sir.
But other than that, thanks for joining me, and we're out of here. Adios. That's the show. I can't thank you enough for reading, listening, and watching and supporting everything that I've done with 20 Years Done. If you're new to this podcast, I recommend you go to 20yearsdone.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/20yearsdone.